Hello everyone and welcome back to Tom's Tomb of Horror. You may be joining me having just seen the Friday the 13th film ranking that I premiered just a little while ago on the channel, and I'm swiftly following up that video with my top 5 favourite final girls from the Friday the 13th franchise. Try saying that quickly after a few drinks late at night. Not easy. So this was actually pretty difficult to do, and I've even had to name an honourable mention because there was one final girl that I really wanted to include, but I didn't think she would quite make my top 5, but I just didn't want to exclude from this list. So there will be an honourable mention, effectively making this a top 6 rather than a top 5, but top 6 doesn't sound as good as top 5 when you're doing this, right? So it's still a top 5 favourite final girls list with one honourable mention. And also, just be warned, there are going to be some spoilers in this list. So, if you haven't seen these films and you don't know what happens, perhaps you might want to drop out if you don't want any pretty big spoilers. There are at least a couple of, I think, pretty big spoilers on this list as I talk through it. Lastly, of course, if you are new to this channel, do drop a like and a sub. I would really appreciate it because I'm just starting out this new horror channel and it helps me build up subs and obviously, encourage me to do more horror content further down the line. So without any more wasting your time, let me start this list of my top 5 favourite final girls. But first with effectively my number 6, my honourable mention. And my choice for my honourable mention goes to Chris Higgins from Friday the 13th Part 3. And I do really like Chris Higgins. I do want to stress that. I think that she really takes the fight to Jason. The way she hangs him from that rope as well is really impressive. I think out of all the final girls, she really does, really does defend herself really well against him. But for me, the problem with Chris Higgins and the reason why she's just an honourable mention and she didn't quite make my top 5 list is I think they could have done a lot more to really flesh out her character and really make you root for her. By the time you get to those final conflict scenes, I felt like I should have been rooting for her much more than I was. I liked her, and by the end of the film, I really liked her and the way she took the fight to Jason. But I just felt they could have built her character up a bit better. So that's for me why Chris Higgins from Friday the 13th Part 3 is just an honourable mention and not higher than that. Coming in at number 5, we've got the OG Friday the 13th final girl, Alice Hardy. And I think, Alice has this kind of likability and relatability about her. I think you can really relate to her character. She feels like one of the more genuine kind of characters in this whole franchise, I think, for me. And I like her circle of friends too. And she also clearly has an ability to stand up for herself and take the fight to Pamela Voorhees, I think, in this film as well. She quite brutally decapitates Pamela Voorhees, which I think is awesome. And I like Alice Hardy. I feel like, she's the OG final girl and she deserves to be at number 5 on my list. Coming in next at number 4 is maybe the most controversial pick on this list, or at least I get the feeling from that, having looked online and seen various Reddit threads and other content about this final girl. I get the feeling that some of you might not like this choice, but I'm going to choose her anyway because this is my list. Laurie Campbell from Freddy vs. Jason is my number 4. And yes, it's not it's a Nightmare on Elm Street film as well as being a Friday the 13th film, but I like Laurie Campbell in the way that, first of all, I actually like her friends a lot and I like their dynamic. I like the way they gossip and the way they tease each other, and I think that gives this kind of sense of fun to Laurie's character as well. And, I just like that kind of dynamic that she has with her friends. I also think that she's had a lot of trauma, and also that she has to deal not only with Jason, she has to deal with Freddy too. I mean, is that not enough? Is that not enough to kind of justify a choice for having her pretty high up? I don't know. But yeah, I know some people don't like this character. Some don't like the acting either. But I think it's all right. This is Friday the 13th franchise after all, and the acting's not always great anyway. So Laurie Campbell comes in at my number 4. Next up at number 3, I've chosen a very popular final girl who would be number 1 on many of your lists, I'm sure, of course. This is Ginny Field, played by Amy Steele, who I thought did a great job, actually. I really like, I thought Amy Steele really acted well in this film, and I love the relationship that Ginny has with Paul as well, and probably one of my favourite couples, if not my favourite couple from the whole franchise for sure. And I think, you know, again, Ginny is a tough final girl. I like the way she takes more of a psychological approach to dealing with Jason. The first time we really see that in these films too. So yeah, Ginny's also likeable and relatable in a similar sort of way, in a similar sort of way to Alice, but I think I like Ginny even more, and that is why Ginny Field comes in as my number 3 on my top 5 favourite girls list. Favourite girls? That sounded weird. Favourite final girls list. Right, and next up, coming in at number 2, I've gone for Megan Garris from Part 6, Jason Lives. And for me, I just think she brings so much personality to her character, Jennifer Cook. She brings so much personality to Megan Garris, and this is the thing that kind of makes her this magnetic character, right? She brings mischief, rebelliousness, and playfulness, but to an otherwise quite tough and entertaining personality. And I think that she also fights hard for Tommy and really supports Tommy, which I kind of appreciate in the way they also fight Jason at the end. She's very kind of, she's trying to help Tommy out throughout that fight. And I think, she just has that mixture of toughness, likability, as well as being able to bring in those rebellious type elements and the mischief that she has too. And I think Megan Garris is an absolutely great final girl, and I had to put her too. She was almost number 1. She was actually my number 1 at one point. I think I was thinking Megan Garris is my number 1, right? But there's just something about Tina Shepherd, who is my number 1 from Friday the 13th, Part 7, The New Blood. And here's my explanation for this, because I realise this might also be controversial, or at least divisive, because I know Part 7's very divisive, but I know Tina has her fans. So if you're a fan of Tina Shepherd, let me know in the comments. I want to hear from you, because I think she's a great character. And here's the thing. I felt like, yes, a lot of people compare this film to Jason, they call it Jason versus Carrie. And yes, she does bring that sort of, that supernatural ability to this film, the psychokinetic powers, if you will. And a lot of people find that very far-fetched. But then you watch the later films in this franchise and it gets even more ridiculous and far-fetched. And I actually think this film, whilst it has sort of, some dark undertones to Tina's story, it brings a lot of humour in as well. And I think the final conflict is absolutely hilarious. I was laughing out loud with some of the final slapstick moments where Tina manages to move that decapitated head to headbutt Jason, and, what she does with the light as well, and how she manages to smash that over his head. I think there's a lot of hilarious moments at the end of this film. But that's not the only reason. I like Tina. I think she brings vulnerability to role. I think there's credit to Lar Park Lincoln. Rest in peace, Lar Park Lincoln, who I think brought some substance to that character in the way she portrayed her as well, and showed that vulnerability and that depth to Tina Shepherd. I think she gets gaslighted a lot by that doctor, and I don't like that, but I can also somewhat relate to that. I mean, have any of you out there had that moment where you see a doctor but you feel like you might be being gaslighted or something like that on occasion? Doctors, there's a lot of fantastic doctors out there. I'm not saying there aren't, but you may have had that moment where, at least I've had, where you just feel like you're being gaslighted. I just really like Tina. I think she's a great character, and she is my number 1. I know not everyone would agree with that, and that's fine. That's what this is all about. Right? It's just having fun and having a discussion. So yeah, let me know who your favourite final girl is. I look forward to hearing from you. Otherwise, from me, until the next video on the channel on Tom's Tomb of Horror, it is bye for now.